Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm speaking to Sharon Slater, the president of Family Watch International and also the UN Family Rights Caucus in New York. Now, Sharon is based in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's appeared on this program many, many times. You might be familiar with the groundbreaking documentary called The War on Children. It's an expose on comprehensive sexuality education, the origins and the agenda behind that. And Sharon has done great work, not only in the US, but all over Africa and around the world to help people understand this attack, insidious attack against children through the comprehensive sexuality education agenda. So Sharon, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Errol. It's my privilege to be on your show. We're so grateful for everything that you are doing to raise awareness on the need to protect children from, like you said, this insidious attack on children called comprehensive sexuality education.
Yes. So, my wife and I always bump into you all over the world when we attend World Congress of Families events. And I think the last time we met was at the United Nations in New York when we attended that International Day of Families events. But again, Sharon, I see you as a global expert on the CSE. I think you've done the most work on researching this issue and helping people understand what is behind it and who is behind it and what the real agenda is. And so you've been a great help to the people of South Africa, and we're fighting this thing. But the Department of Education, with the help of UNESCO, is fighting back. But right now in South Africa, there is a lot of discussion about violence against women and children. It's called gender-based violence. And in the previous segment, I spoke to Haley McNamara of the International Center on Sexual Exploitation about how porn or the consumption of porn fuels violence against women. I want to talk to you about comprehensive sexuality education, or CSE, as it's more commonly known, and the images and the content of this program devised by International Planned Parenthood Federation and driven by UN agencies like UNESCO and others. The content and the images, what that does to children and how it fuels sexual violence of child-on-child sexual violence. Let me put it that way.
Sure. Well, most people are aware that the human brain is not fully developed until the early 20s. So when children are exposed prematurely to sexualized material, it creates pathways in their brain that are very difficult to change and get hardwired over time. So we know that children that are exposed especially to pornographic images can be trapped in these addictions that lead to behaviors, can lead to sexual abuse, one child on another, and so forth and so on. And we've discovered that these comprehensive sexuality education programs that we've been studying for a number of years have these elements that can really harm and damage a child's developing brain.
Yeah, so maybe if you could explain, because you've done a lot of research on comprehensive sexuality education, what kind of images are in this thing? Because a lot of people are not sure, they haven't seen it. Our Department of Education here has not really been open and transparent with this policy or this program that they've brought into the country. So people have, got bits and pieces of information, but you've actually went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Can you perhaps tell our audience what you've seen that's in it and you believe is harmful to children?
Yes, we have actually an analysis tool. It's called the 15 Harmful Elements Analysis Tool for CSE programs. And let's just take the Regional African Teachers module that was launched in Cape Town, South Africa. And it was a regional module to train all the African teachers all throughout Africa on comprehensive sexuality education programs. It's important to know who produced this regional module. Well, it was produced by UNESCO in partnership with UNFPA and also in partnership with an organization called Advocates for Youth. Well, who is Advocates for Youth and why are they partnering with these UN agencies? Advocates for Youth is this radical youth partner of International Planned Parenthood Federation. And International Planned Parenthood Federation, I know this gets a little complicated, is the one that benefits financially when children are sexualized. They have 65,000 service points all throughout the world, and they're especially focused in South Africa and African countries, because if they can sexualize children, then children are going to come to their clinics. In fact, this African teachers module at the end actually refers African children, tells teachers, African teachers, to refer children to Planned Parenthood clinics throughout Africa. Okay, and it has very graphic elements in it. There's, to just describe one of them, there's a picture of a female with her legs wide apart, where you see all of her genitalia. Well, it's a detailed drawing with an analysis of all the different body parts. And one of the 15 harmful elements of these comprehensive sexuality education programs is they teach children they have a right to sexual pleasure. And they believe Planned Parenthood on their information actually says that children are entitled to sexual pleasure, and how to get different forms of sexual pleasure is important to their health and well-being. So they will mark off the sexual pleasure spots, teach children how they can stimulate each other sexually, either through masturbation or mutual masturbation, so that they can feel this sexual pleasure, which they say is a right for children. So you can imagine how this would sexualize children and create this idea that children can be having sex with each other, which can lead to sexual abuse, violence against women, and so forth.
So Sharon, you've gone through this thing several times, done a lot of research and background on it. Are you convinced that the ultimate objective of CSE is to sexualize children? It's not to inform them, to make informed choices, as their blurbs say, but it's to sexualize children, because I've also went through the material. And I'm not convinced that they are teaching children to make responsible decisions, because when you tell children it is a right, you have a right to sexual pleasure, and you must exercise that right, and you must even override your parents' concerns, then that means they're sexualizing children, and that is going to have huge implications on children, on sexuality, and also on the issues of abortion and all of those things.
Well, and it's not just about sexualizing children. It's about indoctrinating them in a whole radical sexual and gender ideology. In fact, this teacher's module for African teachers, it actually defines what's called gender identity. And it says that gender identity means you could identify as either male, female, neither, or both, that you could actually be something rather than male or female. So it pushes the radical transgender ideology. That's one of the harmful elements. Another one of the 15 harmful elements that we've identified is it usually turns the children actually into activists to promote abortion, to promote LGBT rights. It has them reanalyze their personal values and see that it's very manipulative, that maybe their values were formed by their parents and that they can have separate values from their parents, and they get to choose what their sexual values are regarding behavior, as it carefully brainwashes them and shapes their views towards these radical sexual and gender ideologies.
Yeah. So now I've seen that our Department of Education here in South Africa has partnered with UNESCO, or UNESCO is driving this really. There's been a lot of pushback against CSE, especially in last year, 2019, as more and more people found out about it, and parents and educators. They've been pushing back against it because firstly, they weren't consulted, and now this thing is just being pushed on them. And they're very concerned about some of the content they've heard about. Not all of it, just some of it. And it's frightened them. And now, because of that pushback, because of the controversy surrounding CSE, our Department of Education with UNESCO is going to be hiring goodwill ambassadors. That's celebrities, well-known personalities in South Africa, to sell this lie of CSE, which means they're really getting desperate. Have you seen this trend in other parts of the world, in the United States, for example?
Yes. This is very big in the United States. In fact, we have a whole coalition in the United States called the Protect Child Health Coalition. The federal government has been spending $101 million annually, starting under the Obama administration, to fund comprehensive sexuality education in every state. But here's something really important that your listeners need to understand is the lies that they tell the countries. They go into an African country or even in the United States, into any state, and they start with, oh, you have this many teen pregnancies, you have this many teens with STIs, you have this, you have that, you're failing with what you're doing. So comprehensive sexuality education is going to solve all your problems, prevent teen pregnancy, prevent STIs. It's going to prevent violence against women, promote gender equality. There's no end to the claims that they make. In fact, South Africa is part of an agreement called the Eastern Southern African Commitment on CSE, Comprehensive Sexuality Education. It's ending at the end of this year, and all the UN agencies are pushing South Africa and the other 20 African countries that agreed to implement comprehensive sexuality education to re-enter this agreement for another 15 years, because this is their marketing plan to change all the gender and sexual norms of your society. They're doing it in every state in the United States. This Advocates for Youth that's pushing now through this teachers module. They even have the African regional teachers module on their website, because they really are the people that created that. They're pushing that in Africa. They're pushing it through the United States. And we have people rising up all across the United States working with us in our coalition to stop these radical sexual and gender ideologies coming through to the children through their number one tool in the form of comprehensive sexuality education.
Yeah, Sharon, we're doing the same thing here in South Africa. Family Policy Institute is leading the charge. As you know, we developed an alternative curriculum to comprehensive sexuality education, and we're calling it value-based sexuality education, because we're teaching children the truth about human sexuality and what they can do to protect themselves. So we want to put that out there and give parents and educators an alternative to CSE. And we're also going to push back against this campaign that UNESCO is funding here in South Africa to bring the truth to people in South Africa, because they're just not getting the truth from our educators. But we've run out of time, Sharon, on this segment, and we're going to be talking to you some more. But I just want to thank you again for all the work you do in the United States and across the world and here in Africa, and all the information you've shared with us and help us with, so that we can push back against this terrible attack and assault on our children's innocence, health, and welfare called CSE. And thank you, and hope to speak to you soon again.
Thank you. And I would just send your readers or those listeners here to sexedreport.org, which has the evidence that shows that comprehensive sexuality education does not do all the things that they're claiming.